They want you to believe that corporate cheating is a modern invention. They want you to think that the massive, illegal $1.7 billion scandal involving Cummins was the first time an engine maker tried to trick the world. But today, we are unsealing the truth about the engine Detroit wants you to forget. While the news cycle is obsessed with software defeat devices and billionaire fines, the real secret is buried 50 years deep in the General Motors archives. We have uncovered evidence that the biggest names in Detroit did not just cheat on emissions tests, they used those tests as an excuse to bury the last truly immortal engine ever built. We are talking about a mechanical masterpiece that did not need a computer to pass a test because it was too busy winning wars and building empires. But why would a company spend millions to hide its own greatest success? Is your modern truck failing because the tech is too hard? Or because Detroit cheated you out of an engine that was never supposed to break? On January 10th, 2024, the headlines hit like a sledgehammer. $1.675 billion. That is the number the Department of Justice, the Environmental Protection Agency, and California's Attorney General slapped on Cummins for what they called the largest Clean Air Act penalty in history. The ink was barely dry before the numbers started to spiral. 960,000 trucks caught in the net. Every Ram 2500 and Ram 3500 pickup from 2013 through 2019, plus another 330,000 buses and workhorses stretching into 2023. The court filings read like a census of American roads, hundreds of thousands of engines flagged for illegal software, each one a quiet accomplice in a nationwide shell game. The government's case was simple, at least on the surface. Cummins, regulators alleged, had built defeat devices, lines of code buried deep in the engine's brain. These were not just technical glitches or paperwork slip-ups. Regulators said the software was engineered to sense when a truck was being tested and then flip a hidden switch. In the lab, emissions controls worked overtime. Out on the highway, those same controls took a back seat. The result? Engines that looked clean on paper but pumped out extra pollution where it really counted. The scale is hard to fathom. $1.675 billion. It is a number that belongs in the world of pharmaceutical rackets and Wall Street fraud, not diesel pickups. The agencies lined up: the EPA, the Department of Justice, the California Air Resources Board, and state attorneys, each one waving a different section of the Clean Air Act. Cummins denied any intent to cheat, but agreed to pay, recall, and repair nearly 1 million trucks. The settlement demands a recall rate above 85%, or else the fines keep climbing. But behind the headlines, another story is hiding in plain sight. The word defeat device echoes through the court papers like a warning siren. It is not just software, it is a strategy, a playbook that has been running for half a century. The only thing that has changed is the tool. In 1973, it was a temperature switch under the hood. In 2023, it is code. The stakes are nothing less than the right to own your engine, not just rent it from a corporation with a kill switch. Buried in the engine's code, the defeat device waits. It does not look like sabotage, it is just a string of instructions, lines of logic that know the difference between a test lab and the open road. When the wheels roll onto the dynamometer, the software recognizes the pattern: steady speeds, fixed steering, a world without potholes or sudden stops. That is when the emissions controls snap to attention. Urea flows, exhaust gas recirculates, and nitrogen oxides drop to legal levels. The numbers look perfect, the regulators nod. But the moment the truck leaves the lab and hits real pavement, the mask slips. The code senses the chaos of normal driving, irregular speeds, sharp turns, a world that does not fit the test. Instantly, the emissions controls ease off. Pollutants spike. The engine runs cleaner on paper than it ever does on the highway. Regulators called these defeat devices, but the real trick is how invisible they are. No extra wires, no secret switches under the dash, just software that knows how to play both sides. In the official files, you will find the phrase Undisclosed Auxiliary Emission Control Devices, abbreviated AECD. These are features the company never told the EPA about, hidden deep in the calibration tables. The recall notices talk about updates and improvements, but what they are fixing is a cheat that worked for nearly a decade. The warranty extensions and repair mandates are just the fallout. For nearly 1 million drivers, the engine they thought they owned was quietly rewriting the rules, turning their trucks into rented appliances, loyal to the corporation, not the owner. This is not a story about rogue engineers or a single bad actor. It is a system built to pass the test and dodge the law, with software as the perfect accomplice. The defeat device is not just a line of code. It is a philosophy. Give the regulators what they want, as long as you never have to live with it yourself. And for those who thought they were buying American power and independence, what they got was an engine that answered to someone else. The crackdown landed like a hammer in 1973. The EPA's order did not just target a single company, it swept across Detroit, halting the production lines of GM, Ford, Chrysler, and even Toyota. The numbers were staggering for the era. 2 million vehicles all flagged for defeat devices. But these were not lines of code buried in silicon. They were hardware, ambient temperature switches, simple and sly. When the air was cold, the switch cut out the emissions controls. The cars ran smoother, started easier, and passed the official tests with flying colors, because those tests always happened at a cozy 75 degrees. But on real streets, in real winters, these engines spewed out hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide far above legal limits. The EPA called it what it was, a violation of the Clean Air Act, a cheat hiding in plain sight. The official directive was blunt. Automakers were ordered to remove the switches from every vehicle rolling off the line. For GM alone, that meant re-engineering entire assembly schedules, scrapping millions of dollars worth of parts, and rewriting the book on how to build a compliant car. There were no mass recalls for cars already sold, just a stop sign for everything still in the pipeline. Detroit assembly plants ground to a halt while engineers scrambled for a fix. The financial hit was real, but the message was sharper. The government was watching and the loopholes were closing. Volkswagen, caught with 2 temperature sensing switches of its own, paid a $120,000 fine, barely a slap compared to the billions at stake today. But the principle was set. The EPA's order read like a warning shot. Defeat devices, whether a wire or a line of code, would not be tolerated. The agency's language was cold and clinical, auxiliary emission control devices not disclosed at certification, but the effect was anything but academic. For every car maker, the cost was not just money. It was the end of an era when you could outsmart the rules with a clever bit of circuitry. The 1973 order forced Detroit to choose, build cleaner engines, or risk being shut down by Washington. That year, the production numbers told the story. 2 million vehicles stopped in their tracks. No recall, no buyback, just the silent erasure of a trick that had worked too well for too long. The EPA's strike did not just punish a few bad actors, it rewrote the rules of the game, setting the stage for decades of cat and mouse between regulators and the people who build America's engines. The defeat device, once a hidden switch and now a dirty word, became the line in the sand. And for the first time, Detroit was forced to reckon with the idea that the government could reach right onto the assembly line and pull the plug. Inside the hood of a 1973 General Motors car, the defeat device wore no disguise. It was a cold switch, simple, mechanical, and deadly effective. The heart of the trick was a temperature sensor wired to a relay, waiting for the mercury to dip below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. On warm days, the switch stayed closed, letting the emissions controls do their job. But when the air chilled, the circuit broke. Instantly, the air injection reactor, or EGR system, would shut down, and the engine reverted to its raw, dirty self. The car ran smoother, the owner none the wiser, and the EPA's dyno tests, always performed at a balmy 75 degrees, never caught a whiff of the real-world emissions. A 1973 internal memo from General Motors Engineering Division spells it out in a single redacted line. Switch opens below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, bypasses emissions hardware for cold start stability. No apology, no hesitation. The logic was as cold as the air outside the test chamber. The device did not care about the law, it cared about getting the car off the line, past the inspectors, and onto the street. A former General Motors engineer, voice distorted, once described it like this: "We had to keep the engines running in Buffalo in January. If that meant the controls took a nap, so be it. The switch just did what the weather told it to do. The path was direct. Ambient air flows past a sensor, the sensor triggers the switch, and the switch either completes or breaks the circuit to the emissions controls. Below the threshold, the actuator snaps open, a vacuum line diverts, a solenoid clicks, and the clean air system goes dark. No computers, no screens, just wires and brass contacts. The whole cheat fits in the palm of your hand, but its reach stretched across 2 million cars. On the test bench, the engine purrs through the EPA cycle, every emission neatly scrubbed. But out on a snowy Detroit morning, the controls are dead weight. Hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide climb, invisible and untraceable, while the dashboard stays silent. The defeat device has done its job, passing the test, failed the world. This was the original playbook. The hardware did not need to know it was being watched, it just needed to know the temperature. The switch worked in plain sight, its logic as old as the thermostat in your house. Yet in the archives, it sits alongside the most sophisticated code of the 21st century, both wearing the same name, defeat device. The only difference is the tool, one you can hold, one you cannot. But the strategy, the intent, and the consequences are identical. And as we turn to the Detroit Diesel 671, the story shifts from the age of switches and wires to the era of mechanical purity before the cheat became the norm. Crack open a Detroit Diesel 671 and you will not find a defeat device lurking in the shadows. There is no sensor waiting to fool a regulator, no software hiding a dirty secret. This engine is as raw as American steel, born in 1938, built for war and trusted to power everything from Sherman tanks to logging trucks that clawed their way up mountains. The 671 is a two-stroke, roots blown in line, 6 with a 7-liter displacement. Instead of valves, it breathes through ports cut straight into the cylinder walls. Fresh air and fuel rush in as the piston descends, exhaust blasts out when it rises. No camshafts, no lifters, no digital brain. Maintenance? A wrench, a set of feeler gauges, and a little grease. Some of these engines have logged over 1 million miles without ever seeing a dealership. Mechanics joke that you can rebuild one with a hammer and a prayer, but the truth is, you rarely need either. During World War II, the 671 was stamped out by the tens of thousands. It powered DUKWs splashing ashore at Normandy and kept troop trains rolling across the Midwest. Its signature howl, the so-called Screaming Jimmy, became the sound of American logistics. In the decades after, it slipped into buses, fire engines, and fishing boats from Seattle to the Gulf. If it broke, you fixed it yourself. If you wanted more power, you turned a screw. There were no hidden modes, no calibration tables, no corporate leash. The 671's only trick was that it kept running, year after year, long after the warranty stickers had peeled away. In the age of defeat devices and digital handcuffs, this engine stands as the antithesis, a mechanical heirloom answerable to no one but its owner. Turn the key on a Detroit Diesel 671 and the world answers back with a sound that is half banshee, half freedom. That signature blower whine rides on top of a deep, uneven rumble. No muffler, no filter, nothing but raw combustion and the relentless push of a Roots supercharger. The engine does not purr or whir. It shouts. It shakes the floorboards and rattles the windows. A mechanical war cry that once echoed from logging camps in Oregon to the decks of troop transports bound for Normandy. You know exactly what is running long before you see it. There is a pulse in the air, a vibration that climbs your spine and settles behind your teeth. The exhaust note is not polite. It is a rolling, thunderous thrum, punctuated by the sharp, high-pitched scream of forced air. Mechanics called it the Screaming Jimmy for a reason. The sound does not just announce the engine, it dares you to try and break it. Under the hood, there is no digital leash, no hidden calibration, just ports cut into cast iron and a blower that never takes a day off. You want to turn up the fuel, grab a screwdriver. Need to fix a leak, a wrench and a steady hand will do. The 671 does not ask for permission. It does not need a laptop or a dealer's blessing to keep running. Ask anyone who has rebuilt one in the field. A retired mechanic, sleeves stained with diesel, summed it up in a single line. This engine only needs two things, oil and a reason to work. That is not nostalgia talking. That is a verdict delivered by 1,000,000 miles of hard labor in trucks, boats, and buses that refuse to die. The 671's durability was not a feature, it was a promise. And every time that blower whine cuts through the air, it is a reminder of what mechanical independence used to sound like. Inside a locked file room at Detroit headquarters, a procurement analyst slides a redacted memo across the table. The ink blocks out names, but the numbers bleed through. Aftermarket service revenue up 28% projected within 5 years of electronic controls. The chart shows a spike the year the last 671 rolled off the line. Another page, stamped confidential, breaks down the calculus. Mechanical engines average 1 major parts order per decade. Digital platforms, 3 service calls in the first 5 years, each one tied to a proprietary sensor or encrypted module. The analyst's finger lands on a forecast. Dealer-only diagnostics are expected to capture 70% of post-warranty repairs. The handwriting in the margin reads, parts revenue per unit, $4,200, projected to double with electronic control module adoption. Buried in the fine print, the strategy is laid bare. Simplicity kills the parts business. An engine you can fix in the field is an engine that does not come back. But when every repair depends on a locked code, the company owns the future, every service ticket, every replacement module, every dollar. The 671 was a dead end for profits. The digital engine is an annuity, and the defeat device was not just about passing tests. It was about locking in a new era, where the owner is just a subscriber and the machine never truly leaves the factory's grasp. A truck sits silent at the edge of a truck stop, keys in the ignition, dashboard lit up with warnings. The owner paid it off last year, title in hand, name on the paperwork, but it might as well belong to someone else. Overnight, a remote signal from the manufacturer's servers locked the engine. The reason? An emissions code the owner cannot clear, a software lockout triggered by a sensor buried deep in the after-treatment system. One call to customer service and the answer is the same. Only a certified dealer can restore control. The tow bill runs 4 figures, the repair runs 3 figures, and until the code is reset, the truck is dead weight, no matter how many miles it has already hauled. This is not a rare story. Across the country, fleets and owner-operators find themselves stranded by something they cannot see or fix, a digital leash disguised as compliance. The right to repair, once taken for granted, now hangs in the balance. Telematics systems track every move, and a single update can turn an engine from an asset into a hostage. The old promise of mechanical independence, of an engine as heirloom not appliance, fades with every locked ECU. No wrench, no prayer, no roadside fix. Just a waiting game, and a bill, and the quiet suspicion that ownership is slipping away, one line of code at a time. Today, the defeat device wears a digital mask, but the motive has not changed. Profit over principle, complexity over control. Each record-breaking fine is just the cost of doing business, while true mechanical independence slips further from our grasp. Engines are no longer owned. They are leased, licensed, encrypted. Until we reclaim the right to repair and remember what we lost, the whistle never really stops blowing. Drop your thoughts below. I read every one.